Jermaine, lovely to see you. Thank you for joining me. How are you today?
Yes, I'm absolutely wonderful, Maria. Even better by seeing that beautiful shade of blue you've got on there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Those of you listening on the podcast, I'm looking fabulous. Okay. Those of you on video, just ignore that bit. Jermaine, that's very kind of you. Do you know, I love the fact that you've got this wonderful energy about you, and I'm going to talk to you about that shortly. But I think at the time of recording, it's the start of 2022, and people have set resolutions and they're going to change and they're going to do all these wonderful things. And I suspect that by the time this podcast goes out, a lot of people have got themselves stuck in a rut and actually haven't made those changes. And this is your area of expertise. So could you give us a bit of advice, a tip maybe? How can we get out of our ruts?
Yeah. Okay. Great question, Maria. And for me, it all started with being in my own rut. And the irony was that started when I was studying a master's degree in psychology, but I was also stuck in a rut. And then it was through some self-study that I discovered a real simple way to turn the tide. And this perhaps might be useful to the listeners and viewers when it comes to turn that tide very quickly after getting into that rhythm of the year, late January, February, find themselves in that rut. And it all starts with our physiology, our body, how we move our body. And I use the word move because in 2022 and in recent years, we're moving less and less. And the less that we move, the less that we release those feel-good chemicals into the body. So the starting point is a three-pronged attack. I call it the empowerment triangle, the feel-good triangle. And the first part is that physiology. So for me, I've got one of those Alexas in the kitchen. I'll say, Alexa, play some reggae music, and I'll dance around, loosen the body. For someone else, it could be walking in nature, walking the dog, could be swimming, could be yoga. So something really to get into the body. A real quick tip that one of the listeners may pick up on is you can go for a walk and do what I call counting chimneys. Now, that may sound strange, but if you imagine the opposite of walking along, looking at your phone, head down, disengaged with your body and mind, when you're counting chimneys, you quite literally have to open up the shoulders, look up, and the research shows that that posture really enhances the feel-good chemicals. Now, second to that then is our self-talk. The second point of the triangle is the self-talk. So usually the self-talk when we're stuck in a rut is negative, especially when we're in that sedentary state. Why can't I succeed? Why can't I stick to my new habits? Why isn't 2022 any different to 2021? These negative questions create negative answers. So once we've changed the physiology, we can change the self-talk. So we might say something like, how can I have an amazing February? How can I make sure I have fun sticking to my new habits to create what I actually want? Because when you ask a different question, that you create a different answer. The mind is like Google. It has to answer the question that you ask it. And then that leads on to the final point of the feel-good empowerment triangle, which is the mind images, the images we create in our mind. So if I'm in that sedentary state, asking negative questions, then I may see myself not sticking to my habits. I might see images of myself overeating, not exercising, things going wrong, things from the past, things from the future. But then when I change that physiology, ask a better question, then I can direct my imagery to quite literally visualize what I actually want to achieve and how I want to feel. And again, the research has shown that the mind doesn't know the difference between a real experience and an imagined experience. It's a little bit like if you've ever woken up from a nightmare, then the heart is racing, you're sweating, but of course the experience wasn't happening. We can use that technology in our mind and body to ensure that we feel good. But then when we put those three things together, we're into our body. We could be dancing, moving, exercising. We're asking ourselves powerful questions. How can I have an amazing February? How can I create the life that I want? Then I create the pictures. What do I want to achieve? And I see it. Then all of a sudden you'll notice very, very quickly that turns the tide. So then every time you want to go for that goal, go through that process on a daily, perhaps every morning and every evening. It takes 30 seconds to a minute. You're changing the composition of your body and mind to put yourself in what I call the state of mind and body to actually go out and create it rather than just sort of some aimless positive thinking, if that makes sense.
I love that. And do you know what? The statement you made right up front resonated so strongly, the fact that we have stopped moving. I think we stopped moving a long time ago when technology became so accessible. You know, you mentioned the iPhone, you mentioned, things like iPads, television, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think we move a lot less now, but in the pandemic, I know that I move a lot less, and I love that. So it's quite simple, really, isn't it? So the physiology, the self-talk about it, it sounds incredibly simple. Is that what we should also be using, would you say, when it comes to setting goals? Should we be using this triangle?
Yeah, certainly set the goals after you've gone through that triangle process. And that's one of those things, when we say it's simple, but it's not easy. It's one of those situations where, I mean, is there a shortage of diet books? Of course not. Is there a shortage of workouts? Of course not. A shortage of gyms? Of course not. But it's really putting yourself in the state of mind and body to use these amazing tools to get us to move more, to think better. So once we're in this state of mind and body, we've taken care of the physiology. So definitely go for a walk, dance around, whatever it is for you, some yoga, then come back, engage with the positive self-talk and the imagery. Then you go into what I call four-wheel drive goal setting. Four-wheel drive goal setting. And I come across this idea when I wrote my book, because I was researching goals, and only 20% of people set goals, and only 6% of people actually achieve their goals. And I found that really interesting. And when I dug a little bit deeper through sort of qualitative research and interviewing clients and businesses and that type of thing, I found out it's because people were setting goals as if life is easy. When, of course, Maria, we know that life isn't easy at times. We face challenges and that type of thing. So I come up with four-wheel drive goal setting based on the idea, you imagine that your most precious loved one was stuck to the other side of a forest, and you had the keys to two vehicles to get through that forest. One was a 1970s Mini Cooper, and one was a brand new Land Rover Discovery. Of course, you take the keys to the Land Rover Discovery because the Discovery is built for the terrain. So I thought to myself, why don't we set goals in such a way so they're built for the terrain of life, if you will? So the four-wheel drive goal setting is 4 W's. What do we really want specifically? So a client might say to me, oh, Jermaine, I want to lose some weight. So they can lose half an ounce. That goal, as it's worded, has been achieved, but that's not really what they wanted. A salesperson might say, Jermaine, I want to make more commission in a month. And they make an extra £1, and that goal has been achieved, but it's not really what they wanted. So the first W is, what do you want specifically? So it could be, I specifically want to get to 12% body fat and weigh 11 stone 3, or whatever the case may be. So specifically, the mind is like a servo mechanism, like a GPS. I'm going to speak at a school in Essex on Friday, and I'm here in Wales. If I jump in my car and into the sat nav, I type the word England, then the GPS won't get me to the hotel I'm staying in Essex. Of course, I have to type in the specific postcode and address of the hotel. Now, when we set specific goals, just like the GPS, if there's a road closure on the M25, my GPS doesn't all of a sudden go, oh, unlucky, back to Wales. Of course, it readjusts to get to the destination. When we set specific goals, then we know that we can readjust. We can readjust our workout regime, our nutrition plan, our sales technique, whatever the case may be. So that's the first W. What do we want? What do we really want specifically? And then secondly, why do I really want it? I call this the most important wheel. Why do I really want it? Because it's that gives us all the juices, the fire, the motivation, if you like. Sometimes I get introduced as a motivational speaker. That's not particularly accurate. We'll talk perhaps more on that in a minute, but motivation is really interesting. Motivation comes from the reason why. So if I was sat down watching Netflix and all of a sudden my house was on fire, I wouldn't need to watch a motivational video to get my family out safely, right? The reason would be
not. I hope not.
The reason would be strong enough. So what I'm a big fan of then is reason stacking. So the research shows when it comes to women specifically, their most successful exercise and nutrition goals are hit before a specific event. And that is indeed the wedding day. The wedding day.
Are you been following me? Because you know I'm getting married this September.
No, I did not. Congratulations. Fantastic.
Lose some weight. So this for me is like perfect. It's tailored to me. I'm taking notes.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. I'm getting married in December, so I'll be a couple of months behind you. Beautiful.
Fantastic.
So yeah, and that's because the reason is so big, and there's a beautiful positive picture in the mind and want to look fantastic in the dress or whatever the case may be. Now, for the other goals, it's very important to have big reasons, but also multiple reasons for this second on the four-wheel drive goal setting, because that creates the juices. I'll give you a real example. So when I first started to change my way of being, my way of thinking, I read a book called The Secret. And I thought, oh, wow, okay, this seems like a cool concept. And, you can attract more money and that type of thing was one of the base concepts. So I was around 22, 23, and I was thinking, Ferrari, Ferrari, Ferrari. And in reality, it wasn't creating the energy within me. And I'll explain why in a moment. Now, when I think about growing my financial security and growth and investments, my son lives with something called cystic fibrosis, which is a life-shortening condition. They're working on a cure. They think it'll be unaffordable for the NHS in 10, 20 years' time. So when that cure comes around, it'll cost between £750,000 and £1 million. So now when I think of making sure I go out there and serve and add value to businesses and clients and that type of thing and grow my business, that reason why of getting the call, they found the cure, and I can just say, look, where can I send the check? So you probably even notice my energy and my voice change as I describe that reason compared with the Ferrari. So find those reasons why when you're into the second why of four-wheel drive goal setting to create that feeling that I just described. Now,
brilliant. I love that. Thank you.
Oh,
That's great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so we've got the what, we've got the why.
Yes, that's right.
One is...
The third W is when. When do I really want it by? So this is always a case, someone might say to me, if I said to someone, you're going to run a marathon tomorrow, they might say, well, no, it's not possible. But I said, okay, you're going to run a marathon in 3 years' time. They might say, okay, that's possible. So we need to create a duration that makes sense. Okay. Now, from there, we're using that servo mechanism in the brain again. So I'm due to be going to speak in Chicago next year. Now, this year, it's January now, isn't it? This year, the only way I know when the flight is going to leave is I need to know the date, I need to know the time, and then I adjust and plan everything accordingly. Goal setting can be the same. So let's say that I want to be from 15% body fat down to 10% body fat by October the 31st, 2022. Now I'm sticking to my nutrition plan, and all of a sudden it's my fiance's birthday and we go out and we have pizza and a few drinks and that type of thing. And that's not quite on my nutrition plan. But of course, that when I know when the date is that I'm going to be reduced body fat, I just adjust. I go, okay, the next 2 or 3 weeks, perhaps a bit more intensity in the workouts, a little bit more stricter on the nutrition plan. When we know when, we can adjust accordingly to hit that date. And the final one is, what can I do first? What can I do first? And this fourth wheel, my invitation is to implement this immediately before you even leave the site of setting the goal. Now, that could be something as simple as, so when I first came up with this process and did it for myself, the physical body and changing and losing body fat was something I wanted to do. So I literally Googled exercise and nutrition plan for mixed race, Afro-Caribbean and Caucasian male, 23 years of age. And then just see what came up, because then you start the research process. You send the message to your conscious and subconscious mind that you're serious and you're taking action on it. And when you keep refreshing these four wheels, even if I did that, those of you viewing this, you see me do this with my hands. I'm moving my hands in a circular motion. That's my body signaling momentum, because when it comes to achieving these goals, creating what you want, you're going to need a level of momentum. So that's four-wheel drive goal setting.
Wow, so much to unpack there. So much content you've just shared. It's a bit like a speech, actually. That's really so I am shocked when you tell me that only 20% of people set goals. I'm absolutely shocked by that, and therefore only 6% achieve them. I suppose is that 6% of the 20% or 6%?
Correct, 6% of the 20. Yeah.
That's terrible, isn't it? That's really okay. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I think this what, why, when, and what can I do first is incredibly simple. What can I do immediately to get momentum is very clever. That works for me. I like that. So why do you say you're not a motivational speaker? Because that was very motivating.
Well, I think there'll be a subtle difference, because it's more about what is your motive for action, not what can Jermaine say. So really, I resonate more with the term inspirational speaker, because I might say something that creates something from within you, rather than me having some secret answer or Jermaine knows this, Jermaine knows that, you do what I say. And that doesn't really resonate. But if I can use my voice, my medium, to share ideas, that create inspiration from within other people, then motivation will come and go just like other feelings. But inspiration occurs. You'll go and do things. You'll do the workout. You'll save the 10% of your salary, wherever the case may be, even when you don't want to and when you're not motivated, because you're inspired and you do it anyway.
What I'd like to add to that, apart from the inspiration piece, you actually give practical advice that, I mean, I can go and do any of these things now myself. And I appreciate that some of this is going to be difficult. The self-talk and the mind images, certainly I would find difficult. But you've given me a map, literally, of what I need to do for my goal setting. And I'm going to go back and review my goals and check that I've got all of those 4 elements in there. So thank you for that. So you've talked about speaking to schools. You've talked about a lot about body percentage fat. It's a level I will never achieve. That these are obviously for men. We ladies carry a bit more fat. How can this apply to businesses and organizations? How do these methods apply?
Yeah, I think what I've found over the last, my goodness me, I've been doing this for 10 years this year. It'll be a decade this year, is we can get the greatest results within businesses. Now, what I mean by that is because usually, not always, usually what I find is there's a disconnect between the goals and the values of the individuals within the business and the goals and the values of the business itself. So what we can do is, if we can combine, if we can understand what our sales team, what our ops team, what our marketing team, what our HR team, what their goals and values are, if we can get their 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours of work synced up with the company values and goals, and the values and goal, and help them achieve their values and goals, my goodness me, then we create a real state of momentum, not only in the well-being of the individuals and the team members, because that's what I'm really enthusiastic about, but there's a real commercial element to that, because people that feel like they're achieving their goals, feel like they have a purpose, feel like they're living their values, their well-being goes up, which means their sick days absolutely plummet, which of course has got a commercial element with it, reducing the turnover of the team, which is one of my expertise, if you like. I'm really enthusiastic about that. And all of a sudden it comes together from a commercial point of view and indeed a team well-being point of view as well.
Yeah, certainly reducing turnover, really important, but also having that energy, I think, as well. And, alignment is very valuable to any organization. So I touched on it earlier. I said that you're very energetic and you're very confident. Where does that come from for you?
The honest answer is practice. Perhaps I'll unpack that a little bit for you. So 10, 11 years ago, perhaps those who have read my bio prior to this podcast or viewing the video, my life wasn't in a great place, shall we say. The wheel of life, if we know about the wheel of life, health, relationships, finances, career, that type of thing, we're all between 1 and 4 out of 10. Okay, and that was driven. I used to live with quite a lot of social anxiety and lack of confidence. So I used to do a lot of drinking of alcohol to mask that and put this fake confidence out there, in nightclubs and bars and that type of thing, create this persona, which ultimately reduces real life confidence. So then, coming out of that, of course, there was the physiological side of reducing the alcohol intake and that type of thing, changing the physical. But the confidence came from changing the psychological, the mental, the emotional. And it actually started with that triangle we talked about. First of all, if anyone listening is living with low confidence, then if we were to act out, if we pretended we were all actors and we were to act out low confidence, what would we do with our physiology? We would close our shoulders, we would hunch our chest, we would put our head down. Then what would we be saying to ourselves? We'd be saying, you're worthless, you can't do anything. Even my voice changes as I act this out. What would we picture ourselves doing? We would picture ourselves failing at that public talk or that speech or that meeting or that conversation with someone we're attracted to. And all of a sudden, we're in that low confidence state. So it all starts with that triangle again, changing the physiology, changing the self-talk, changing the images. And then a real key thing we can do is when we're suffering from low confidence, we're often minimizing ourselves and putting people up on pedestals. They're up there, I'm down here. So when I first wanted to become a speaker, I had a voice in my head. We don't know where these negative beliefs come from. I had a voice in my head that said, no one wants to listen to a young black speaker with a Welsh accent. Don't know where that comes from. But that was coming from that low confidence state. So when I changed my state, then I realized that I was putting these top motivational speakers, inspirational speakers, business speakers up on a pedestal. Now, what that does is that creates a belief that they have something that we don't. When in reality, every human attribute, we all have somewhere in different measures, and we show them at different times. So all we have to do is to realize, let's say we take someone we look up to. Let's say I look at the amazing Maria and I say, oh, Maria's so charismatic. She's so fantastic. She's so confident. She's an amazing communicator. I don't have those things. I get my pen and my paper and I can say, where am I charismatic? Maybe I'm charismatic when it's just myself and my fiance, when it's just myself and my son, when it's just myself and my dad. Where am I confident? Where am I an excellent communicator? And it sounds like a lot of work, but again, it's very simple, but it's not easy. So going through that process, answering those questions, be like, oh, okay. Because then we realize there'll be situations where Maria and everyone else isn't confident, isn't charismatic. So then all of a sudden we put ourselves on a level playing field and we realize we're all human. And you do that with the correct state of mind and body, and you can have that, because it's where's that confidence aimed? That's what I always ask people. You can take that confidence onto the stage, you can take that confidence onto the screen, you can take that confidence into the football match, onto the acting, whatever the case may be. You can aim that confidence wherever you want it. And the more that you do it, the more that you rehearse it in your mind and get into that reality, then people are all of a sudden, just like they were with me, Jermaine, you're so confident, when in reality, here's the key point, you're just being you, because you can't fail at being yourself, you see.
Yeah, everybody else is taken, right? I don't know who said that, but it absolutely works. I like the fact that you're sort of encouraging people to spend time on themselves, you know, spend time on being the best they can be. I like that very much indeed. And again, you give advice that's easy and practical to follow. So I think everybody wants a young, Black, Welsh man, come on, to speak, because there's not many around. I can't think of very many. I did recently see a fantastic Black Welsh man sing. You probably know exactly who I mean, right? Mr. Tom Jones, but he's on a different, he's a lot older, right? So there's definitely a space for you, a very big space for you. So on a practical note then, when it comes to business, and one of the big problems that we're facing is obviously the fact that we've been working from home for a long time and teams have been dispersed, and yet teams probably are having to come back together in a way, and they're probably dealing with some great challenges to get their businesses back and running. And how can you bring a team together to overcome some of the challenges they may now be facing because of what's happened with the pandemic?
Yeah, and it's been really interesting to see these challenges. And what's been quite nice is I have experienced these challenges along with my now delegates, which is really, really interesting. I mean, the speaking and training business wasn't the best business to be in during the pandemic, and I used it as an experiment so I could help other people once we started to come out of it. So for me, what we do is we look at the team as individual humans first. So we ensure that we impart that advice, that knowledge, those ideas that can really allow them to spend time on themselves and create a level of self-fulfillment and self-worth first. So that would be separate. They would be doing that in their own time. But then, of course, when we bring the teams back together, we really focus on what can be done and why we want to do it and why we can do it. Now, what that does is that creates a level of energy. Anything that creates energy in the room or on the Zoom, that rhymes, that was unintentional. Anything that creates energy within the room or within the team, that is when you know you're onto something. Now, there are going to be some things, of course, depending on the business. I do a lot of work in the care sector, lots of talks and training in the care sector. There are, of course, always going to be things where we need to tick the box, of course. But I think now more than ever, people will enjoy thinking outside the box, coming together outside the box, whether that's through team building activities. I mean, I'm a firewalk instructor, which is quite an out there team building activity, but that people are really craving almost what is the opposite of sat in the home doing nothing. So if we can be part of a business team, my goodness me, moving towards a worthy goal, and we do that in a fun way that's enjoyable, that hits individual values and goals, then all of a sudden the team is brought closer together than it would have been, dare I say, had the pandemic had not happened.
Yeah, no, I like that. And by the way, I have done a firewalk. I have also walked on glass. I've done the board breaking, and I've broken the arrow with my throat. So I've been through all the things that I know you put people through as an experience, and they are incredibly uplifting and amazing. You do feel really powerful, and that you can perform incredibly, which leads me to my next question. Oh my gosh, these links are just so good, right? I want to talk to you because you have another model which will help us, which I believe you call the 5 pillars of peak performance, which is not easy to say unless you've got your teeth in. Could you share those 5 pillars for us, please?
Yes, absolutely. And again, this is gonna sound incredibly simple, but it's incredibly powerful when we align these 5 things in our lives. And it sort of came to me one day because I did a lot of peak performance coaching. My specialism in the early days was within sports psychology. So lots of those athletes were looking towards peak performance, and that actually really enabled me to transfer into elite business, because lots of people wanting to maximize themselves within business and business teams are actually looking for peak performance as well. So it was almost by accident where I was just thinking deeply one day, and it's really it sounds quite morbid, but bear with me. It's really the 5 things that we would die the most quickly without. So number 1 is oxygen. Number 2 is water. Number 3 is sleep. Number 4 is nutrition. Number 5 is movement. So what I'm looking for is for people to engage with a practice that touches on each of those 5 every single day. So if we start with oxygen, the breathing, most people, can hold their breath for a minute, perhaps not much longer than that. Now, if we were to look at people's breathing, if we were to walk down the high street on the tube, we'd see that they're breathing quite shallowly, not really maximizing the lung capacity, maximizing the oxygenation within the blood and that type of thing, and in the brain, which of course affects thinking and performance. So perhaps there's lots of different breathing practices. I'm not an expert on this, but a daily breathing practice to oxygenate the body increases performance, increases clarity of thought, and as we all want, we can feel better on a daily basis. Then, of course, the second thing is water, hydration. I think the world record is something like 7 days without water, something like that. Most people, lots of people that I speak to, they really struggle. And usually when I speak to them, they do grab their water as I make this point, is they're hitting maybe a couple of glasses a day, a liter a day. And even though we've got that 8 glasses per day recommendation, it is dependent on many different factors, age and gender and physical activity and that type of thing. So you can do a bit of research on yourself, but really maximize the hydration. Myself personally, I'm usually given a couple of talks a day. I'm taking my son to golf practice. I'm doing some exercise. So I'm around 3.5 liters per day. Because again, the body, the brain, the water is 70% water. So again, this water lubricates the performance and the clarity of thought. My expert is, above the chin, if you like my expertise, but the hydration really does tap into that as well. Third is, of course, sleep. Now, if we're living with that negative voice, that anxious voice, chattering away, oh, I've got to do this tomorrow. Oh, I can't believe I did that today. Oh, this. Sleep can become very difficult. So a very practical tip, lots of people invest in this type of thing at this time of year, is literally just a small journal, keep next to the bed, literally get the thoughts out of the head onto paper, commit to your subconscious mind to solve the challenges whilst you're asleep, knowing that you will address them tomorrow. And then, of course, there's some physiological things around sleep. If you breathe better and stay hydrated, you will indeed sleep better as well. So each of these start to impact each other. Next up is nutrition. I won't profess to be an expert on nutrition, and it does seem that it's very individualized. So look into what is the maximum nutrition for you. I did actually have an allergy test. This might be a sneaky tip in there that I've given in the past. There may be some things that comes up in an allergy test that you weren't expecting, and that's affecting your energy and indeed the inflammation in your body and mind, which can affect your mood and some of those psychological levels as well. And the last point is movement. Movement. We know that the life force can leave the body. We touched on it earlier in this conversation, that if we're sat around not doing much, it doesn't tap into our human primal force. So that daily movement, it's not for me to tell you what it is. Could be dancing, could be the gym, could be cycling, could be walking in nature, whatever it is for you. But you put those 5 simple pillars together. Again, it sounds so simple. But if you actually implement it, then some challenges wash away. You have clarity of thought to go into actually implementing and creating and attracting those goals that you've set for yourself.
Okay, so oxygen. I can't read my writing. What was the second one?
Water, hydration.
Water,
yeah.
Of course, because I took a glass of water, didn't I? So oxygen, water, sleep, nutrition, movement. It's because I was drinking the water when I wrote water down that I can't read my writing. That's really useful. And as you say, actually, all of these tips, so practical, so easy, but not simple, but not easy to do always. And it's that, I imagine, that continuation, that consistency as well, that you need to keep practicing these things. You've given us so much value. I cannot thank you enough. Incredible value. Is there anything else you would like to leave us with to think about, or anything you'd like to share that you've got planned coming up?
Well, yes, I'll do a couple of those. I'm really personally excited, and I'm sure many of you are, to be going, all being well, back out there into the real world. I'm doing a tour of some schools for a fabulous charity called the Hemraj Goyal Foundation. I'm doing lots of work for various different care industries, and indeed moving into the recruitment sector as well, because my content I'm so excited to share across the board, and we can adapt it. Everything I do is bespoke, so I adapt it for different age groups, different industries. So I'm really excited to be doing that. The final point I would make, because I know there are some voracious note takers out there like myself, if you've got that journal, you've got that pad, at the top of the pad, when you're setting your goals, when you're creating these things for yourself, right at the top, nothing is more important than my well-being.
Wow, that's really powerful. That is really powerful. Nothing is more important than my well-being. Like that very much. In fact, love it. Jermaine, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I've really enjoyed hosting you. And everybody listening, if you have enjoyed listening to the Speaker Show, please make sure that you give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. Keep up with future episodes on the Speakers Associates website, which is speakersassociates.com, or your favorite podcast app. Grab a copy of The Rut Buster, The Secrets to Taking Control of Your Body, Money, Career and Life. It's packed full of great advice. And if you would like to invite Jermaine to speak at your next event or your conference, please make sure you contact Speakers Associates in plenty of time to book him, so you won't be disappointed. Thank you very much. I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.